Hello and welcome back. In today's lesson, we're going to be taking a look at how to create some artificial light sources and then create some lighting effects off of those light sources. We're going to be taking this image here, which you can get from freepik.com from the author by the name of Welcomia. I'll leave the link in the description below. And we're going to be adding in a butterfly. I used a stock image of a butterfly. I'm sure you can find another image of a butterfly. It's just a stock image. We're going to be changing it pretty drastically anyway. And then we're going to be adding that to our scene and then adjusting the colors and then making this an artificial light source to which we're going to be casting onto our wolf. Let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and open up Photoshop. If you're following along in a different editor, the steps are almost identical. The only difference is you won't have access to the camera raw filter, but you can make, for the most part, the same changes that I'm going to be making with adjustment layers. I'm going to be sharpening up the wolf, so you're going to have to use maybe like a sharpen tool or something along those lines, and maybe add some other contrast using an adjustment layer. But you should be able to achieve the same results. I'm going to go ahead and set up a new document. And the document size is based on the image of the wolf. I'm going to keep that the same, but adjust the resolution. And we're going to call this lighting effects. Let's go ahead and bring in our images. I'll adjust the size of this a little bit. And then let's go ahead and bring in our butterfly. Rotate that horizontally. And then decrease the size to be something a little bit more believable. Maybe a little bit smaller. All right, good. One of the most important things to remember about bringing a few images together and compositing images is they have to match. So these are not an identical match. I'm going to be painting in the edges here, and not to worry, I'm going to go ahead and speed up the sections where I'm painting things in. The butterfly here, you want to try and match that as closely as possible to our wolf. So that is not just in color, but also that of pixelation, that of the clarity, even this filter here, which I can't undo. I didn't create this image, so this filter has like this strange glow. So we have like a very strange color on the eyes, which should be potentially white or blue, which I'll have to paint in. We've got this super overexposed area here, which we're going to use to our benefit as the lighting effect to our butterfly. And we also have some strange color green along the areas here. So like the background where it's supposed to be black is actually green. And then we have green in the grass, and then there's actually green throughout the black regions of the legs and the shadows throughout the body. So what we're going to be doing is making our butterfly, we're going to have like this soft blue-green glow coming off of the butterfly after we adjust the sharpness of the butterfly and also the contrast. So that's where we're going to start. I have two copies here. I don't know why I have two. I only need just the one. And let's go ahead and put this guy into its own folder, and then this guy into its own folder, and we'll name those butterfly and wolf. And so our butterfly, I'm going to rasterize for the time being. I'm going to convert it back into a smart object after I make the adjustments that I want. So I want to sharpen, change the contrast, and change the color. I'm going to do that all to a pixelized or a pixelated image. Let me go ahead and make an adjustment. We're going to change the color mixer or channel mixer and make this something a little bit more blue. And so you saw I applied that the adjustment layer to all of the document. To change that, you can just use this icon right here, which forces a clipping mask onto specifically the layer that we're working with. So that's what I want. I want to clip that onto the butterfly. If you didn't want to do it that way, what you could do is control click onto the thumbnail. That's going to select all of the pixels on that layer, and then you can apply the adjustment layer that way. But I don't want to work that way, being that Photoshop makes it easy to clip onto specific layers. I'm going to use the clipping options. So now that I have this layer, I'm going to go to my channel mixer and go ahead and clip that onto the layer that I'm working with, and now start to make some adjustments. And that's pretty close to the blue-green that I want. I want it to be a little bit more blue, and then I'll paint in some green on there. Something like that. We'll adjust the green. That looks good. And then I'm going to be painting in the green areas in some of the dots up here. So I'll speed that up. Okay, so I think that looks a lot better. We've added some nice highlights and nice color, something to add a subtle effect. So now that we have, for the most part, the color that we want, now we have to add the glow. So to do that, we're going to be using our curves layer. If you've never used curves before, it's one of the most powerful adjustment layers you can apply. Let me show you how it works. And it's actually pretty simple. It takes a little bit of understanding and experimenting or playing around with it to get used to it, but we have that of our whites or white point adjustment, our gray point adjustment, and our black point adjustment. And then you can increase or decrease any value, for the most part, in any direction and to any degree that you want. It allows a lot of flexibility because we can adjust, let's say, through here, to start adjusting some of the whiter regions into darker portions, but we can S-curve that and make subtle transitions back into lighter areas as well. So you can change many different aspects of the tone and also the color if you wanted to, not just that of the white, the gray, and the black adjustments. You can also adjust specific colors and tones as well. So that's not what I was going for though, so I'm going to undo those things. And what I'm looking to do more specifically is just make it darker. So I'm going to bring this down, and then what we're going to do is click onto the mask itself, and then we're going to brighten up just very specific regions on here using our mask. So let me go in here, use my paintbrush. And then we're going to increase the brightness. Now, just like before, it's really important that you see that we're applying this directly onto our specific layer that we want to work with, and that's going to be the butterfly layer. If you've not done that, it's going to be applying this lighting effect and the curve that we were adjusting to the entire document or the entire project. You don't want to do that just onto the butterfly for right now. And we want the light source to be from for the most part, the center of the butterfly, or like right in this region right here. We're going to be spreading out that light. So we're going to make that really bright and leave the rest of the image very contrasting. Lighten up this just a little bit. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing again, but we're going to bring out the highlights and the midtones instead of just that of the one center region. We're going to add some highlights to the lighting that we've just done. And again, that's applying to my butterfly layer. And now we're going to bring our slider, our curve, in this direction and bring out the highlights and midtones. Alright, good. It's starting to look like it's glowing a little bit. But again, we want to apply the same effect. So we want to start primarily in the center and then work our way out in a glowing concept or style. So what we're going to do is we're going to apply black to our mask here on the entire layer. And we can do that by clicking on Control and then Backspace. Holding down Control and Backspace while we're on our mask. And now what we can do is we can paint out that region that we want to. And so what we're going to be doing is we're just going to be brightening up the center part here. We're brightening up the most in the center and then only just a little bit on the outside. So brighten this area up here. And then just lightly on the outside. All right, that looks pretty good. If you wanted to, you could also put yet another curves layer on there. I'm going to leave that for right now, and I'm going to start working on our wolf. So if you notice, our butterfly has more contrast and it looks like a little bit more sharpness than our wolf. So we're going to have to match that so it looks like they're at the same depth and the same depth of field for the picture that was taken. So we want to try and make that a believable shot. So we're going to go to our wolf now, and as I mentioned, I'm going to be using that of a camera raw filter, and I'm going to go to my filter and then camera raw. What I'm going to be doing here is increasing the clarity quite a bit, but I'm going to be bringing down the exposure as we're pretty overexposed, and I may decrease the contrast as well. And let me try to increase it. Yeah, so I'm going to increase just a little bit, and everything else can stay the same. So let's go ahead and click OK. And that should bring them a little bit more closely together in terms of how they look, as far as their clarity, their sharpness, and also their contrast. Now, I still have this filter on this wolf though, so the color is all off. That's okay. We're going to be getting rid of most of any color in here because in a dark scene, there's very little color to work with. Most of the darker regions and the shadows are going to absorb any color, so that's fine. So what we're going to be doing is I do want to change the color of the eye a little bit, and I do want to bring this out, make it a little bit lighter, as well as a little bit blue, just a very mild blue color. So I could use a layer on top of that and then blend them, but because I want to change the pixels, I want to change this image to have just this part of the region of the image have a different color. I'm actually going to rasterize this. I don't typically recommend rasterizing. Typically I say, or I suggest working exclusively in smart layers. So you can try this if you want, but know that you can destroy and ruin your image. And if you save it, there's no going back. But I'm aware of that, not a big deal. I'm gonna try and make this more to the color that I want. That way, as I apply filters on top of it and adjustments on top of it, it's going to affect the pixels more in the manner that I want. So let me find a light color blue that I like. Something like that, maybe. Right there. And then we're going to paint this in. And I want the opacity to be very light as I change these pixels, maybe around 10%. And I'm going to work with a much smaller size brush. And it seems like such a small and minor detail that I probably should not spend so much time focusing on. But the effect, especially once we bring the colors in onto the face for the reflection, it has such a dramatic impact on the overall composition. And eyes in particular tend to have such a range of emotion and such a dramatic appeal. It's something that the audience and the viewer spends a lot of time looking at, and it really pulls a viewer in. So subtle, but powerful. And we're going to be changing the black regions here to be, instead of like this washed out strange color, we're going to make it much more black in just a moment. So I think that's pretty good. Subtle, again, but enough so you can notice it. And then, so that's not the reflection off of the butterfly yet. We're going to be adding a reflection off of the butterfly. So even though this is blue, it's not the blue from this butterfly. I wanted that to be more specifically the color of the eyes of the wolf. And then we're going to add the blue-green glow into the eyes as well. And again, not into the black regions though, anywhere. And after we increase the blackness, it won't even be possible, as it's going to absorb any color instead of reflecting it back. So now let's go into our curves layer for our wolf. Actually, let me go ahead and decrease the brightness first. So I'll decrease that. Maybe increase the contrast a little bit more again. Just a little. And I'm going to be applying our curves now. And this we're going to be making incredibly dark. And it's going to look like it's too dark, as a matter of fact. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to be painting in the regions that we want to have any light at all. So we want just the smallest little subtle hint of anything else happening in the background. And we're going to mask out the regions that we want to be visible. So I know that looks way too dark, but it's going to create a much more dramatic effect once we bring in the light here. So we're going to go back to our mask and then go back to our paintbrush, and now we're going to paint in the regions that we want to see. So now what we're going to do is, now that we have the area that we want lit up, we're going to go back in, and this detail in here where it shouldn't be lit or glowing and it is, we're going to paint that out. So just like we painted it in, we can paint that back out. Okay, good. So now we have, for the most part, the areas that we want revealed and the areas that we want hidden. What we need to do now is very similar to adding color and exploiting color to the butterfly. We want to do the same thing, but apply it as an overlay to the regions that have light now. And then we'll just add a dash of a little bit of color where there's any light visible elsewhere in the image. And actually, I might make this a little bit darker back here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So what we want to do now is make another layer. And this is just a standard layer, and we don't even have to flatten it down to our wolf if we don't want to. We're going to be applying a more broad type of an overlay. So with our blue still selected, actually I want it to be more accurate to this. Now what we're going to do is just start painting. And it's going to look like a mess at first, but once we apply the overlay, anything that has black is going to allow this to disappear for the most part, and anything that has any lighter tone is going to take on that color. So we're just going to start painting lightly. Actually, I want it to be around 20%, not 10. And I want to try to avoid as much of the black in the regions where I don't want color as much as possible, but it doesn't have to be perfect, and I'll show you why in just a second. Okay, so I know you're thinking that looks terrible. Doesn't look like lighting at all, but all I have to do is go over to our blending mode and then go to overlay. And the overlay is going to allow the blue light to be absorbed into the regions that are lighter, and then all the darker regions are going to get rid of or absorb entirely the color and keep the black. So I still want to get some blue in here. And then a really fine amount of blue reflection in the eyes in the whiter regions. Okay, good. And then over here, in any spot that I missed, I want to go back over. And the blue in here is enough. I don't want it to be drastic, just a little bit, just a hint of blue. But there's regions that I missed through here, and I want that to be a little bit lighter. I also want to add a touch of the green that I have in the butterfly as well, just a very small touch. Alright, good. I like that. Looks really good. Back over here, it's still a little too light. Let me go back to my mask. Alright, good. I'm happy with that. I think that looks really good. I could get really picky and start adding a little bit more light here and gradually brush out more and more and more, but I'll spare you. I'll leave you or allow you to do that on your own project. For the most part, that's the effect that I wanted. Now what I want to do is I want to dodge out some brighter regions where it creates a little bit more vibrance in the lighting effect. So let me go back over here. Let me make another layer on top of this, and then we're going to do edit, fill, and then 50% gray. See that? 50% gray. Opacity 100%. Okay. Now it looks like that's not helpful at all, but it actually is. We're going to go to our overlay once again, and we're going to go to our dodge tool right here. And now what we can do is, with the exposure rather around 10 or 11%, if we go into the eyes specifically, again, the eyes are so important. Adding a little bit of detail here and there for the color and the vibrance is very important. What we're going to do is we're going to add some shine, and be careful with how much you add here because you can really ruin the picture. You want to enhance it, not ruin it. So we're trying to just brighten this up a little bit. There we go, it's starting to come together. And the black you want to try to avoid. You want that to remain as dark as possible. And so that's looking good right there. Something like that. And it looks like it's really shining, really staring into that butterfly now. And maybe just a touch here and there in like the more exposed regions. Like I said, we're going to use the exposure of this image to our benefit. Alright, good. Just very subtle details. As powerful as this is on our wolf, when we do this to the butterfly, it's going to add a little bit more vibrance and more glow over there as well. So I'm pretty happy with that. I'll leave that. Maybe just add a couple more little bits over here. All right, I think that looks great. Maybe back over here as well to blend this together a little bit nicer. All right, good. I like that. And now the last thing we want to do is just apply a very similar effect to our butterfly. Go ahead and add another layer and put that on top up here. And we'll go ahead and fill that 50% gray once again. And we want to do an overlay. And we're going to paint in on our butterfly once again with our dodge tool. And you have to be careful with this though. You don't want it to be too dramatic or too intense. It can ruin the picture. You just want to add some detail and some color and really make it exciting. I think I've done exactly that. I think that looks good. It all matches in color and brightness. I do want to add a little bit of a glow effect around him, so I'm going to add another layer. And you don't have to do this necessarily. I think we've sold the idea or the effect quite well already. But I'm going to grab my blue and go back to my layer here and Opacity 10% should be okay. I'm going to do some like radial um, paint on here to add like a glow effect, and then change the opacity. So I'll start like that, and then like that, and then like that, and then maybe one more. I think that's good. I do want to change the opacity down drastically though. I just want a subtle little glow off of my butterfly. Yeah, like that. All right, good. And now, I mean, you can change the overall brightness if you wanted to, and potentially another curves layer. Let's go ahead and try it out. It might be beneficial, it may not be. Typically, it does enhance. I want to bring out the brightness in the scene, and then further darken the regions that are not bright. So we'll go to another curves layer, and we'll try this. Yeah, that looks really good. All right. I'm satisfied with that. Yeah, I think I'm going to leave it just like that. Maybe if you wanted to, maybe try another brightness layer and then darken depending on how your results were. But I'm really pleased with that. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you in the next lesson.